Hello and welcome to an easy guide on how to set up your very own Rust server. Please make sure to subscribe and like the video as it helps us out a lot. There will be two parts to this video. First, we're going to talk about Steam CMD, and then we're going to talk about port forwarding. Both parts are quite important to setting up a server properly, so please make sure that you pay attention to port forwarding. I'll put the link in the description below, but Steam CMD is a way that you can install and update various dedicated servers from Steam via a command line interface. It's a Linux-based software, so we need to access it from our command line. So we'll open up our command prompt by right-clicking and running as an administrator. This is important as we're writing and making some file systems. So mine's on my D drive, so I'll navigate to my D drive. And we're going to look at some of the files on my D drive. So I know that I'm looking for the Steam CMD folder. So once I'm in my Steam CMD folder, so I went to the directory Steam CMD, I'm going to look at all the directories on the Steam CMD, and I actually have a few different versions of Steam CMD, so I'm actually going to navigate into my next Steam CMD, but you don't need to do this. Once I'm here, we need to make a folder. Once I'm here, we need to make a folder or where we're going to store our Rust server. So in this case, we're going to mk make a directory, and then we're going to call it what we want. So I'm going to call it KSS Rust. That's the directory I want to make, and you see when I type in dir, we now have a folder called KSS Rust. We also have an exe called Steam CMD here that was created on 6/12/2019. So I'm going to run that. And it's going to make sure that I have the newest version of Steam updated, which I do. The next thing we're going to do once we have Steam updated is we're going to log in anonymously. Some games will require you to have the game. Rust is not one of these. So we can just log in anonymously into Steam, and it'll let us install the dedicated server without any issues. So we're going to make sure that when we're installing this, we install this into the folder that we created. So if I force underscore install, and then underscore a directory, and then we're going to use the directory that we created prior to opening up the Steam CMD. So that's D, and then it was in Steam CMD, Steam CMD, and then it was in KSS Rust. That KSS stands for Key Smash Studios. Please subscribe, it'll help us out a lot. So we're going to force install to that directory. So when I hit enter, we're into that directory. Now that we're on this directory, we need to do an app underscore update, and then we're going to specify the application ID that Steam has associated to Rust, or rather Rust's dedicated server. So in this case, it's 258.550, and we hit enter. It starts installing the game. It'll do pre-allocation and all that jazz. It's worth noting that instead of just app underscore update and then the ID number, you can also add on things. So you can do a dash beta for a staging world, or you can do a validate to make sure that the install goes through properly. But for all intents and purposes, you really just need this app update and then ID number. Now that it's done downloading, we can exit Steam as it's already downloaded the dedicated server. We can now close the administrator, and we're going to go to our file location just to make sure that it fully downloaded everything that we need. And we can see here on my D drive in Steam CMD, KSS Rust, we now have the dedicated server, and we're almost done. What we need to do now is create a batch file, which will allow us to update the server each time we run it, as well as start the server. And we really want to automate this process so it's all one cohesive thing as opposed to updating this every time we want to start the server. So what we're going to do is to make a batch file that sounds a lot scarier than it actually needs to be. We're going to create a thing, and I will put this in a paste bin beneath, so you don't necessarily need to go through all the steps. But we're going to turn off echo, and all that means is we're turning off the redundant text back that the server will give us. So we don't need it to repeat these steps to us because we're the ones issuing them. And we're going to put a start here. This is for a little bit later. This start is the start of a go-to loop in batch. Sometimes the server will hang, so this is how we're going to get around that. And then we're going to go to an update for the server. So what we'll do is we'll navigate to our D drive, and then just as before, to Steam CMD /Steam CMD.exe, and we're going to run this program. And then we're going to give it the command plus login anonymously. And then just like before, so we've given it a login, which is anonymous. We're going to give it the command plus force install the directory. And then we're going to give it the directory name and location. So in this case, it's d:/Steam CMD /Steam CMD /KSS Rust. Actually, I don't need this quote here. Sorry. And then we're going to give it our final command, which is the, well, I guess we'll give it a quit too. But so our second to last command, which is apt update. This would really help if I could spell. And then our game ID from Steam, which is 258550. And then we're going to tell it to quit. So basically everything that we just did in the Steam CMD command prompt, we're making the script do. And all that does is every time this line executes, it updates the server, which is great because anytime you start your server, you want it to be at the most up-to-date state so that you can connect to it with your actual game. Now we're in that folder. We're gonna save this into this folder. So we're in that folder, so we don't need to give a directory for this, but we're gonna install this Rust dedicated application. So we'll run Rust dedicated.exe. And we're gonna do it in batch mode. Don't really need to know what that means. And then we're gonna do server .port. So what we're doing with this command is we're gonna give our server port to the application, so it knows which port to look for incoming information on. So for me, I'm going to give it a TCP 28315. So the TCP range can go all the way up to like 65,000 or something, but 28,000 is fine. That's all that I really need. So like I said, I'll put this in the bin. You just need to adjust the parts that are important for you. So we're going to give our server.level, and we're going to do a procedural map. That is how you spell that. And then we're going to give it a server seed. So that's server.seed. And then it doesn't really matter. This can be I think it's between 0 and like 2.7 million or something. It doesn't really matter what number you put here. I'm going to put 328, I don't know, 147. Doesn't matter. That's just a unique ID for the world that you're generating. Sort of like with a Minecraft server, if you've ever done that. And we're also going to give it the command server.world size. If I can type. We're going to give that 4,000. Server.max players to 10. And you'll notice between each of these commands, I'm doing plus, some variable name, space, the variable space, and then the start of the next command. That's very important. That's how it reads the command arguments. Just like up here, how we use Steam to the plus command for Steam to go, we're doing a plus command for a variable and then a string or an integer or a float to go into that variable. It's just how it reads through the code. So after our max players, we're going to do a server.hostname, and we're going to give this a string, which is whatever we want to call our server. So if I want to call my server Key Smash, that's what it's going to be. And then we're going to do a server.description, and this is just something similar. This is just a message or, you know, a description of your server. So like, hey, this is my cool server. Yay. And then we're going to give it a server identity. And that's also a string. So Key Smash 1. And then we're going to give it our second port that we need to know about. So archon.port, this is how it's seen. And we're going to give it a TCP port that's one higher than our server.port. So I did 28315 up here. So we're going to do 28316. It's not necessary. They can be totally different numbers, but it's an industry standard or, you know, a common practice just to have a listening port and a direction port be one apart. And then we will have an archon password, archon.password, and then we just need to put whatever our password is after that. So, you know, if you want your password to be pass, then that's what it is. And then we're going to give it an archon web. So archon.web, and then just the one here. And then the last line, like I said before, sometimes the Rust dedicated server has a tendency to hang up or, you know, experience it doesn't load fully. We're just going to put a go to start here. So this is, once it reaches here, it'll go back up to here if this stuff didn't load. So once this is done, we'll go to start. So if we crash or something like that, we'll go back up to start and execute it all again. So that's our file. Like I said, I will drop this into a pastebin and put it in the description below. You just need to edit whatever you need to do. So your port, your server seed, your server name, all that stuff, you'll need to change that to match whatever you want for your server. But I will paste the skeleton of this so you can just change the parts that you need. And then we'll go up here and hit File, Save As. And we're going to go into our KSS Rust folder, and we're going to save this. Instead of a .txt, we're going to call this server start.bat and hit save. And we'll notice we have a Windows batch file right up here in this folder that just popped up. And when we double click that, you can see that it's checking to see if the server is up to date. And then it's going to create the server. And this is just the standard information that the server is going to dish out to you as it's creating the world and doing the asset gathering and all that jazz. So it'll do the asset warm up all the way through. It'll ask to allow access through your firewall. It's generating a map, creating an Archon WebSocket, and it's giving you time to load on all these things. That's what this is. So it takes 1.2 seconds to load swamps, 2.1 to do road layouts, so on and so forth. And soon here, it will finish with these. So there, it saved the world. It processed the world. Starting a Navmesh. I believe Rust is made with Unity, so it uses the Navmesh system from the Unity engine. If you are interested in Unity or Unreal, we're going to be starting a series soon on basic use of Unreal Engine, and potentially after that we'll do one for Unreal Engine. So give us a comment down below if you're interested in the Unreal Engine and want to see a guide on how to create things within the Unreal Engine. So now it's going through all the things that it pre-allocated and building the sources. And there we have it. Don't worry about too many of these errors. That doesn't really matter. But once you get to this point, your server is up and running. And the only way to make it able to be seen from the external web, like I said when we were working on this batch file, we need to make sure that we have an opening on these ports through our firewall in our router. So there's a multitude of ways to do this, and it varies from every router. So I'll put this link in the description below, but Port Forward usually has a guide for every game. So this will vary based on every router that you have. So if we go over here to routers, they have step-by-step guides on port forwarding for every single router that is made and manufactured in existence today. So it's sorted by name. So if you have a gigabyte router, you come here and click on gigabyte, and it'll tell you how to find port forwarding. All you need to do is find your interdomain IP address. So this will be not your external IP address, but one that is within your local area network. And you're going to port forward to that. There's not much point in me showing you on mine because mine is going to be vastly different from all of yours. So just make sure that you come here, find your system. We don't need to pay for the software. If we're using a gigafast router, we just select the model that we're using, and it'll tell you how to connect to your router. what the default passwords are, and then how you port forward. So just make sure that we're doing TCP forwarding on your computer with the port. So, for Xbox Live, it may be this, but we need to just make sure that we port forward on the ports that are in our server start.bat. So for me, this is 28315 and 28316 here. It's right here and right here. I need to put TCP forwarding to my computer's port. So if you have any questions at all, please let us know below. We're more than happy to help. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. It really does help us. And thanks for watching.